It's been quite a few days, guys. So curious what we're going to talk about today. Angela, I'll kick it off with you.
I want to talk about the stage of grief that we might all be at. I'm sure they're different. And I also want to talk about the incoming appointments from the Trump administration.
Lots to be said. So first off, welcome home, everybody. And speaking of stages of grief, I got my all black and Tiffany, just for you, button directly to the top.
I want to talk about, which I think is in line with everything you guys are saying. What do we do now? What is the path forward, essentially? So with that, let's get into the show. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome.
Welcome home, you guys. This is episode 53 of Native Land Pod. The last time you saw us, it was election night. So this is our first show after the election. And in the spirit of everything that you guys are feeling and that we're feeling, we're going to jump right into the show today.
Hi, Native Land Pod family. So I am from the state of Illinois, and we went blue. So I felt like we understood the assignment as far as elections go. My question is, how do we grapple with the reality of what just happened? I mean, America chose someone who is racist, a bigot, a felon, and willingly voted to put him back into the highest office of the land. I, for the life of me, cannot understand how that happened. And I can't understand people, even some in my own family, justifying that decision. It makes no sense to me. The Republicans could have put anyone up to be elected, anybody, but they chose him.
All right, how do we grapple with what just happened? And I think that's what we spent the last week trying to do. So, Andrew, how do we grapple?
Well, one, it's individual. Each of us have our own ways of getting through this. I got to tell you, it was, I'll confess, my coping was bed. I spent more days in it than I would like to admit. Mostly because I didn't want to watch anything serious. I didn't want to read anything serious. I didn't want to believe what the country again had done. And then the last few days, I kind of dived directly in trying to understand it and to be curious. I saw AOC post on, that's Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez out of New York, who basically went to Instagram and said, hey, can y'all help me understand? And she did, and I thought in a very sincere and genuine way, how is it that you could vote for me or other Democrats down ballot, but then select Donald Trump at the top of the ballot? What are the things that you find that we share in common? I bring this up, Tiff and Angela, because while this is completely non-scientific, and by the way, the graphic that we are showing, for those of you who are watching and for those of you listening, I'll just describe it. MSNBC, Michelle Norris, a new contributor there, sort of abbreviated some of the statements that people were posting back to her Instagram around what do Democrats that you voted for, like me and Trump, have in common that will cause you to split the ballot. Some of the responses were, it's real simple. Trump and you care about the working class. Someone else said, but wanted to change, so I went with Trump and blue for the rest of the ballot to put some brakes on him. Voted Trump, but I like you and Bernie. I don't trust either party establishment politicians. And it said also, I feel like Trump and you are both real. And I think, all of it strikes us all differently, the way in which Trump shows up. Great alarm. Some people may not remember what his first term was like, the million people who died in the wake of his mishandling of COVID, his erraticism, his assault on protesters and turning the military on them so that he can hold the Bible upside down. Maybe some people just didn't dive in because they got a check that had his name on it, even though it came from the U.S. government, made available to them by the Democrats in control of the Congress. Whatever it is that allows you to mist over the overwhelming, sort of disqualifiers for the office of the presidency, people were able to mist over it and find their own reasons for why they could stick with him. And I know we'll get into all of that, but I would just say to the viewer, the listener who posed the question, I think this is going to be a much more complicated answer, and we won't be able to answer it today and maybe in the next few weeks or in the few coming years. But I don't think we're going to be able to resolve this thing simply on the question of race and gender alone. And if we want to understand it better, we're going to have to be willing to dig in, ask some tough questions, find ourselves in some uncomfortable places. And I don't mean for the unreachable folks. I'm talking about for the people who are similar to us, grew up similar to us, have the likeness in so many ways, but somehow reasoned themselves into a different choice this time. I'm curious at this stage, still a little bit angry, but my advice would be feel what you need to feel. And I can't even imagine for Black women who poured out so much of themselves, just how badly this cuts. But I just want you to know that it cuts pretty badly for a lot of men, myself included as well.
Andrew, I don't know if I agree with your point about going beyond race and gender, but we'll get into that later. Because Andrew, I feel like you and I talked the most probably since election, and the grief is so heavy. How's your heart? But what are your thoughts also?
So a few things. One is I was hoping that we could kind of succinctly go through like the stages of grief, because they have been so extreme. And I think that there are so many people at home, including just based on that question, who can relate to that. But I have vacillated. I haven't like had a clean cut to each stage. I've gone from deep sadness and depression, like Andrew mentioned. I was waking up in the middle of the night going, like, is this real? Like thinking it was like a Groundhog's Day moment. I thought this was going to play out differently because Joy and Brittany and I prayed the day before the election this time, instead of me calling Joy the day after the election, like what happened. And I still ended up having to make the call, like what happened. And then I went through denial, which was like, okay, clearly this thing was stolen. Who did he steal votes from? Last time he was looking for votes, so clearly he must have found the votes. Elon could get on people's phones and text them about cotton they need to be picking. Surely he could figure out a way to be negotiating with these various precinct officials in states to figure this out. And then I talked to campaign staff who shall remain nameless. And the rage that I feel for these staffers and the things that they've been through, the ways in which they were gaslit, the ways in which, Andrew, we saw this play out in your election, I'm angry now. And I'm sad, because I will be damned if they rest this at the feet of Kamala D. Harris. The stuff that needs to be overturned and changed up and ended is astounding. Like my mind is frankly blown. Like the level of surprise that I keep dropping down into is just more than I can even bear and articulate. So in short, I am still vacillating between the various stages of grief. What I'm trying to lean into is not my outward expression of frustration and rage. I'm trying to deepen into listening. There are a lot of internal conversations to be had that I'm listening to, and there are a lot of external conversations to be had that, frankly, I'm not even ready to have because of the deep betrayal I feel by this country and the deep, deep betrayal that I feel for a party that I think regularly takes us for granted as voters, takes us for granted as consultants, takes us for granted as media, takes us for granted as staffers.
And candidates.
And candidates. Absolutely candidates. Absolutely. And that is the conversation that I want to have. It just ain't right.
Just quickly, what are the stages of grief? You said deep sadness, anger.
I said deep sadness. I said denial. I expressed denial, but I didn't name denial. And then I talked about rage. At some point, there's acceptance. I ain't accepted nothing yet.
You know, I will tell you guys, I did not, after the election, I did not watch the news. I couldn't. So to this day, I have not seen Donald Trump's speech from election night. Probably in the past 2 days, like you, Andrew, I just re-emerged. I didn't read a paper. I just didn't consume a lot of information. And so the past few days, it's really hit me. I'll say the first few days after election, I wept every day, every single day. We had a lot of conversations with people, and I think one of the most sad experiences of this is, of course, talking to other Black women and what we all feel after being betrayed by this country and having our hearts broken by this country. But it was also sad, to your point, Andrew, talking to men. I talked to every Black man I know also wept. And they wept because they said they talked about looking at their daughters and what their daughters had gone through and how hopeful and excited they were. And that was one of the questions I asked. How do you look at young Black children and say, you can dream, you can do anything, you can be whatever you want to be, and know that there are caps to those dreams? As of right now in this country, there are caps to those dreams. So I think I've just been deeply sad. I've not wanted to engage in the post-election analysis that so many people jumped out there to do. I tried to watch cable news a few times, and I just, to be honest with you, this is hard because we all know some of these people, but I just thought y'all are on these airwaves bullshitting these people because you know good and damn well the conversations we were having amongst ourselves was way different than what they were saying on air. And I got increasingly frustrated watching people dance and tap dance and bend themselves in knot for the comfort of white folks because they were so anxious probably about their own contracts and not wanting to say the wrong thing and talking about this bullshit like it's normal and normalizing all the plans that he had or normalizing his cabinet picks, all those things. It just made me feel so incredibly frustrated. And it just begged the question of if you are someone who wants to make change, to your point, Angela, about talking to the staff, and I hope you share some of the specific things, because I have talked to a few folks too, and I doubt that there's going to be a lot of daylight in what people said about their experience. But it just made me think, if you are a person, particularly a Black person, who wants to institute change, you don't join things to become a yes man or a yes woman. You join to disrupt. And then when you're met with so much resistance, it can beat some people down. And sometimes they're going to slice the head off one of them and hold them up and say, this is what happens to you when you try to buck this system. And I feel like that has happened in cable news. I certainly have a testimony. I feel like that's happened in campaigns. And I feel like that's happening politically in the country. So I don't know where y'all want to go from here, but that's how I've felt. And I know we have a lot to get to. So I do want to talk about the cabinet. I do want to talk about Black and Latino men. But I just wanted to take that moment to reflect back to folks that all three of us have felt what you all have felt the past few days.
And I just want to give voice to the children because you raised that. My wife was with the kids on election night, so they woke up the next morning, and Jackson happened to overhear the news and ran up to our bedroom, and he's in tears saying, "Mommy, Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris." And then the other two run up, and now they're sad. And that evening, when I got back to the house, the first thing out of Jackson's mouth was, "Daddy, Kamala didn't win. Are we going to be okay?" And I said, and we had a conversation, but we tried to keep them separated from this, right? And I imagine a lot of parents tried to keep them separated from the news so they wouldn't hear all of the stuff and be worried. And so I just said that to say to the parents who are raising little people who don't all the way get and grasp all of this, but are feeling the emotions of us, the adults, the parents. They know the difference between good and bad, right and wrong. And they're watching wrong win out, and they're trying to make sense of it. And I just want to encourage us to be in transparent conversation with our kids. You don't got to go R-rated, but you got to talk to them about what this process is about and why we show up in it to hopefully make, the road a little smoother for them in the future.
Well, I was thinking.
Go ahead, Angela.
Well, before I was thinking, it looks like we're just about up on a break. So maybe I'll think on the other side of the break.
Yeah, that's literally what I was about to say. I don't know where y'all want to go, but Trump has already named 13 or stated his intention with the 13 members of his cabinet. And I know, Andrew, you want to get into the male voting bloc. So on the other side of this break, we'll dive into both of those topics. We'll see you on the other side.
What's up, Native Land Pod? My name is Derek Monroe. I'm from Harlem, New York. And my question is, what does this fight look like for us? I feel like I get it. We're all overwhelmed at this point, but I think it's time that we need to get together and strategize. And I'm just wondering who, especially when it comes to the Black community, are our leaders that would bring us together so that we can strategize effectively, so that we are not just taking advantage of. I feel like we are too busy being reactive and not proactive. I understand when I see on social media, everybody's like, oh, well, we're just gonna see how this play out. But I'm in fear that the play out will be worse than what anybody anticipated. So I'm just wondering, who is our leadership? How will we come together? And what is the plan? And why aren't we being effective right now? We only have so many days before the inauguration. So if there's anything that's going to be done, it needs to be done. Time is of the essence. So tell me, you guys, what you think.
Thanks to Derek Monroe, a brilliant hairstylist, somebody I've loved over the years having conversations with while also getting my wig done. I want to say there's so much about this, Tiff, you brought this up before the break, that's not normal. And one of the frustrations that I'm hearing percolate quite a bit is if the Democratic candidate and the campaign hedged its bets on Donald Trump being a fascist, why is it that after he's won the election, he's no longer being treated as a fascist? Case in point was Joe Biden meeting with him in the Oval Office for a peaceful transition of power. Kamala Harris in her concession speech talked about a peaceful transition of power. But how do you have a peaceful transition with someone who actually isn't so peaceful in his remarks and some of the things that he's done in the past as president? What is this all about? So I wanted to make sure that I was factually accurate. There is some law for this. The Presidential Transition Act of 1963 ensures that there is some transitional things that happen. Most of it come from an entity called the GSA, the General Services Agency in the federal government, and actually don't have much to do with the pageantry that happens in the Oval Office. Now, they say that an incumbent president has 3 responsibilities. 1 is the law, 2 is precedent, and 3 is goodwill. But I want to know how far goodwill should go. Should he be meeting with Donald Trump in the Oval Office for a peaceful transition of power? Is that a way to neutralize some of what is to come? I actually don't like it, y'all. Maybe I'm just out here. Maybe I'm, Andrew, I know you're the resident diplomat among us and you may see it differently, but it actually really grinds my gears that this is something that we doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on. I really believe this man is a fascist and a racist and a bigot and he's a xenophobic person and he, all of those things. And not to just label him, but these are the things that we say based on the words that have come out of his mouth. So why is there the pageantry in the Oval?
2 quick things. One, I think Joe Biden, having wrested so much of his rebirth in his run for presidency, and even Kamala through the prosecuting of the case around why Donald Trump is unfit to serve in the office again, they were rightly trying to ring the alarm, sound the alarm, treat him as not normal, as a pariah in many ways. But once the people have spoken, once voters have decided, and in this way, in a relatively convincing way in modern politics, given the spread, it is incumbent upon the existing leadership to, in my opinion, hold with its traditions and its norms. And quite frankly, it's been done. Hillary Clinton sat there as the opponent of Donald Trump, but as a former first lady and wife to President Bill Clinton, in hair distance to Donald Trump as he took the oath of office. I can't imagine what this woman wanted to do, snatch his hair, hers, and everybody else's. But that's not what we do in democratic societies. And as frustrating as it is, it will frustrate me to have to see Michelle and Barack Obama and Bill and Hillary Clinton and even the Bushes, even though George Bush stayed silent in this cycle. But they will sit on that platform and that podium, and they will demonstrate not only to Americans, but to the rest of the world that what mature, sophisticated, democratic societies do is they have peaceful transfers of power, the passing of leadership from one party to the other. And I know I'm a traditionalist in this way, but I do believe the optics are important to communicate. It was fine to treat him as a pariah and call him every name under the child of God, up until the point that voters decided that they wanted him to be their president again. And at that point, he is entitled to the rights, privileges, customs, and obviously the legal justifications for his acts as president. Now, by the way, that doesn't stop us from protesting. That doesn't stop us from disagreeing vehemently with those things that he does that we disagree with. But as it relates to, I think, the traditions of the office and the passing of leadership from one administration, one party to another, it is important to keep those traditions, if not just for ourselves, certainly as an example to the rest of the world that this is what democracies do. You don't hold power just because you want to keep it. You don't get to stay in office after voters have said you got to go. You don't do what Trump did and act like a kid on a tangent.
But we know how he's going to act. Up. So why are we trying to be normal? I guess that's my question.
Bill Clinton came after George Bush, and he was against everything this man stood for. No. Right?
This man is an actual fascist who said that once he's elected, there will not be another election. So why are they sitting down with him in the Oval Office for a peaceful transition of power to not democracy? Why are we sitting down to have a peaceful transition of power to fascism? Why are we sitting down?
Because the voters decide.
All right, well, Andrew, I gotta tell you, I completely disagree. Yes. Well, let me, this kind of shifts us to what Angela wanted to talk about, but I'm going to tell you why. We had brunch after the election, and one of our friends said, that Democrats keep running change candidates and Republicans keep running change the rule candidates. And I think that's what we have here. And I want to talk about why I don't accept that, well, that's the way it's done. And now it's time to, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Not that you're saying that, but even the whole imagery to the globe of, yes, we've accepted this and we're turning the keys over to this man. Elon Musk is one of the wealthiest men in the globe. He obviously had a huge hand in Trump's election. The thing that we haven't discussed in detail on this podcast is that his companies were promised over $3 billion in contracts across 17 government agencies. Mm-hmm. This man was running essentially a puppet regime for voters, media, and the candidate himself. He will essentially be tapped to oversee people who would be regulating him. I don't think the country, and perhaps not everybody even on this podcast, has wrapped our arms around what it means to completely undo democratic norms and principles in this country. I don't think that we have considered the domestic policy that will completely upend what our social norms and mores, our political norms and mores. I don't think that we've comprehended what this means on a global scale. To accept that, well, this is what it is, and he has to welcome him into the White House. This is a man, the media has normalized it, but I think as people who look like us in our community, I think they depend on us to be able to see through the bullshit. And despite the media treating this man like, oh, well, he says he's going to appoint somebody who wants to kill the Department of Education. What do you think about that? Instead of, oh my God, what does this? I don't really care what pundits think about killing the Department of Education. You as a reporter, you as a journalist hosting a show, I'd rather you talk to us about the real live ass consequences that will have on the American people.
We agree, but those are two separate things.
They are, Andrew, but you're saying, but a part of what you're saying suggests that this is all normal.
Well, don't let me suggest
clarify.
anything,
Let me
because
know.
I can say things.
Well, say it more clearly, because that's what it sounded like to me too, please.
No. So ceremony is one thing. These are ceremonies that have been cultivated over a period of time that don't inure any approval to this man's agenda. It doesn't rubber stamp, sign off on, or agree with Elon Musk being not just a gatekeeper, watchkeeper, but nowhere near the government of the United States in any capacity.
Would they have Osama bin Laden sitting down in the Oval Office with the president?
Listen,
would they have had Osama bin Laden
if Osama
in the
bin
Oval
Laden were
Office
elected,
sitting down with the president?
Well, can I just point out a point?
He's a terrorist. This man is a terrorist.
Guys, this isn't that. That's not the point. All I'm saying is this: we can go off the cliff.
It is the point. It is absolutely the point.
Well, let me hear, Andrew. Let me hear what you have to say, Andrew.
You can go off the cliff and never, ever get power again. That's where we are.
No,
that isn't where we are, because
Andrew,
we haven't begun to
very well could be. He said this was the last election.
But Angela, you are smart. However, your wisdom does not supplant that of all of the American people who went out and voted. And unfortunately, I've had to subject myself to the same damn thing. You don't think I'm hurt? I felt awful. I felt humiliated.
I'm not questioning your pain, brother.
I'm going to finish my point. And ashamed that I had to call a guy and who I don't respect, who I don't like, and anything else, and concede a race for governor. Mm-hmm. No, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good to Kamala either. She had warned the country of what a fascist looked like, and it was him in standing for him. Yet she picked up the phone, she made the call, because that's what mature democracies do. Now, two things. We don't want to conflate two different things. Do you think Kamala Harris is rubber stamped and signed off on his policies on Elon Musk
even talk
or any
about
of the above?
her. I
no, you didn't name check her, but it is important.
No, I didn't even bring up her concession
This is
call.
why, but you didn't. But I did.
I did not.
You
and
did
I'm
not,
saying
you
I
did
asked
not,
the question
Angela, but
about
I did.
the Presidential
If I could
Transition
say
Act of
why.
1963
If I
and
could
the
say
Oval
why.
Office meeting not being statutorily required.
Again.
That is
Andrew,
a
finish your
different
point. Finish your point.
conversation.
Because you're talking about the pageantry.
I don't want to be labeled as saying something else. I didn't say anything
I
about
can
your
be labeled
concession
as
call.
saying
I didn't
something
say
else.
anything
But
about his
I think
concession
Andrew's
call.
making a different point. So, Andrew,
but
finish your point.
It's not okay to say that I essentially suggested that when you didn't want to have anything suggested to you either.
You can assign me saying that the president should attend inauguration and host the incoming president at the White House as being a rubber stamp of Elon Musk. Never said that.
I did not say anything about Elon Musk.
Let me get back to the point, though. Let me get back to the point, if I could. The point is, we can still disagree with this man vehemently, and the fight still remains. Him sitting down for an hour-long coffee is not what we are really taking issue with. What we are really going to be taking issue with is when he starts lining people up and marching them out of this country. When he comes in my neighborhood, for my children, for my family, for my way of life. Those are the fights, and we have to gear up. And to bring us back to what the question was, it was how we are going to strategize around our fight back against this man. And I appreciated the brother mentioning the fact that we can't just say we're going to wait and see what happens. Why? Because other people in other communities have the privilege of wait and see. But for us, wait and see what happens means immunity for law enforcement officers who then go out and slaughter our children. It means food and food support programs not getting to the people who need it most, and so on and so on and so on. So those battles, I have no resignation on any of them. We will fight those as they come and before they get here. But we litigated the fact that this man is a fascist in the election. The voters had the opportunity to consume that and make a decision as to whether or not they cared. And we don't get to supplant our knowledge, our will, our want over a democratic practice like an election. That was my point. And so certain norms must be kept to.
That wasn't an issue. Some things when things are not normal, norms go out the window. And I appreciate your perspective. I am not saying, nor have I ever said, that my wisdom, my knowledge, my limited experience takes every single voter, the millions of people that voted for Donald Trump, or the millions of people that voted for Kamala Harris. I'm not trying to supplant any of that. What I'm saying is there comes a time where we have to question the pageantry and determine if the pageantry is worth our credibility. That is what I'm asking. If we have said this man is a fascist, if we have said democracy is on the line, if we have said the things that we know and have relied upon for government support and programming will be no more, and we throw all of that out the window so that Joe Biden can skin and grin in a meeting with this man who was mugging the camera, he's still in character.
But do you think Joe Biden
I'm not
wants to
talking
have to
about
sit
what he
there?
wanted to do. I'm talking about what he did.
But what he did,
It ain't about what he wanted to do. It's about what he
did was demonstrate not Joe Biden's personal will toward Donald Trump, but the will and the graciousness and the magnanimity of the office of president. And just because one derelict, Donald Trump, has no respect for democracies and our norms, doesn't mean that we are then equal by abandoning them right along with them.
I think
Andrew,
that if he took an oath,
for.
I would like for us to pull up the presidential oath.
Well,
Because I think that it's actually a violation of the presidential oath to sit down and meet with this man. I think
that's an opinion, but I think
it
Andrew,
is my opinion. I said I think.
Yeah, Angela, I hear you. Number one.
Okay, cool.
I'm just saying, there's no need to shout. I hear you, and nobody is attacking you.
I understand. I don't feel attacked, and I'm not attacking any of
think
y'all.
it's
My
charged,
volume is my
guys.
passion.
I just want us all to have like a mature exchange of everything. Because right
I am
now,
also passionate. It's mature passion.
Well,
I have siphoned off on occasion. Angela, you siphoned off on occasion. Tiffany, you will siphon off on an occasion, because this is a highly charged moment.
Yeah,
and I understand that all of us have strong opinions about how we feel.
I just want us to
this
be
thing.
respectful to each other's point.
Agreed,
Andrew, I hear your point. Angela, I hear your point. I have something I have something to say about both. Andrew, when you're talking about the pageantry of it, I do appreciate your perspective in maturity, because that is not something that we saw in Donald Trump. You know, I mean, it was giving very much Meghan McCain on The View all the time, where he would throw a temper tantrum in front of a microphone, even post the election. That is a challenge. Angela asked a question that I think deserves a deeper answer to, and she was saying, would we invite the Taliban in the Oval Office? Well, this just shows how the media and other people normalize what this man did, because he did, in fact, invite the Taliban to Camp David. And so I think the concern and the anger and worry and pain, all of those things, is rooted in what we experienced, what we can easily recall, and what we know to be true that is coming, that is awaiting us.
Yeah.
Andrew, I hear your point. You're an institutionalist, and you have always championed that on this show. I think what Angela and I are saying is perhaps it is time to disrupt those institutions. Like, should we be, even the image of him being on that dais on Inauguration Day, what might that say to the world? How might that normalize the fascism we're about to be confronted with? So I gotta say, I agree with Angela that we should at least pose this question. Just because it's been done all this time, why does that mean it should continue to be done? I don't know that it should be at this point. I think this is beyond. There should be a peaceful transition of power, but I think this is going beyond a peaceful transition of power in terms of imagery. But wait, before you respond.
But just to state that statement, it has been done every time except for Donald Trump.
Yes, I know, but I think that is Angela's point, that he is the fascist. Like, should we do it? Okay, well, let's go to a break, and we'll pick that up on the other side. We'll go to a break.
So, Tiff and Angela, I agree with you. I think we have to. I don't believe in doing things for doing things' sake. I don't want to make that argument. I think it is symbolically important for let's just start with the fact that the campaign that decided we were going to run on democracy can't then abandon the traditions, customs, rights, responsibilities, all too appertaining to their offices, even when they're on their way out. And we have seen difficult transitions in the history of this country before.
Like
and guess
this?
what? Those gentlemen, and well, for its day, I thought that George Bush, when he stole Florida, I thought it was completely unconstitutional that this man should be taking office. How do you get to take office as president in a 5-4 decision that then says at the end of that decision, this is not for precedence, never to be repeated, never to be referred to as precedent setting, right? But it happened. And the sky did fall in some places that I cared about. All I'm simply saying is we do have to mount a fight. We do have to push back on Donald Trump. But for me, it ain't going to be over a coffee. It's going to be over his policies.
You guys, I don't know how to express this enough. This is not about him having a coffee with Joe Biden in the Oval. This is about the image and the signal it sends.
About him having coffee with Joe Biden in the Oval.
No, she's talking about what's going to happen in inauguration.
No, I'm not.
Oh, well, what are you talking about?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about even today, because we recorded this on Wednesday, him saying to Donald Trump, welcome back.
Oh, yeah.
Is he welcome?
Yeah.
Why is he welcome? Why is what he stands for welcome? Why does that have a place in the most sacred place other than the Capitol that this nation says it built? Like, why is that the case? Why
Angela,
is it?
I think it's a fight. I just don't think it's the fight we ought to be having.
Why is it that when democracy is on the line, this is how we respond? It does not make sense to me. I'm someone that doesn't do well in hypocrisy. I can handle nuance. I don't do well in hypocrisy. Either he's a fascist or he's not. Either he's a terrorist or he's not. Either he's an insurrectionist or he's not. It doesn't matter that he's bamboozled and pulled the wool over the eyes of many. We haven't even gotten to the appointments. None of the appointments he's made are about the economy, which is why people said they voted for him. So either we normalize it or we decide this is the time not to normalize it.
Two things can be true at once. He can be a fascist and a racist and a sexist and a misogynist and all those things.
That's
and
more
he
than
can
two
also
things.
be the incoming president of the United States who
should not come.
For our judgment, yours, mine,
he's not
and
even going to
everybody
be there.
else's.
His White House is Mar-a-Lago. Like, why?
But Andrew, you're saying what I heard you say is to Angela, it's a fight. It's not the fight we should be having now. I want to push back on that point because I have to say I did
not now. By the way, I just don't think this particular thing.
I hear you.
Coffee with the president and the new president.
It's not just
I get what
with
you're
the
saying.
President.
And I think the imagery though, Andrew, because when I did not hear Joe Biden say welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yeah, which I would have a challenge with that too. But Andrew, I have to push back on this because by Joe Biden saying that, welcome back, what message does that send to President Zelensky? What message does that send to Modi of India? What message does that send to Vladimir Putin and Dmitry Medvedev? What message does that send to Steinmeier? What message does that send to Macron? It is saying we are legitimizing
that
this
we're
man.
a mature democracy that unfortunately has to do hard things.
That's not what it says.
So do you think Michelle Obama and Barack Obama wanted to stand on them goddamn steps after this is the man who made him?
But Andrew, can I just point out?
States, this was the man who made him pull out his birth certificate.
Yes, but can I point out something?
This is about
the same damn thing. He called.
No, it's not.
But
yes,
it's all. But Andrew, you're talking about something that was. Andrew, let me just say this: you're talking about 8 years ago. We did not know.
The same dude.
Yes,
but
he is. But he had
track record.
He had not tried to overthrow the government at that point.
Correct.
He had not even come out and said he would try to overthrow the government at that point. He had said racist things.
Somebody on Fifth
he said
Avenue
he
what
he said exactly. That's not what. Let me just be factually for the listeners. What he said exactly is. If he shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, people would still support him. And he was quoting somebody who had written that. Let me just say, Andrew, yes, now we see that he's right. But what I'm saying is in 2016, he was a racist. He's not the first racist to occupy the White House. He's a xenophobe. He's not the first xenophobe to occupy
Exactly.
So then one more.
But he did not have a track record as the lead,
and we warned
as the chief,
against him.
as the commander commander-in-chief, the executive orders and actions he passed, the bills he signed, none of that had happened yet. This was the first office he was ever elected to.
Michelle Obama had previously warned us in the closing argument in 2016 in Philadelphia
that's still different.
about
Andrew,
who he was.
It still was a
she stood on the
suggestion
steps.
about...
She handed her
All
a
right.
Tiffany's box. She welcomed her into the White House. She decided
And
on
she regretted
Inauguration
off the
morning
record about
she
how
was
that was
not
the
going
hardest
to put
thing
her
she
hair
had to do.
together.
She
was
talked
gonna
on the
go
record
there.
about it.
She was going to tighten her face, but she was going to sit there and endure it for the country and
I
for
don't
the
want
office
to
that she
endure
represented.
another
You don't
goddamn
have to,
thing for
and
this
that's why you
country.
shouldn't
And
go to
I'm-
inauguration.
I'm
You shouldn't
not,
sit and
Andrew.
watch
It's
the
not
coffee.
about inauguration. This
It
is not about...
This is
no,
ceremony.
it's
This is why I'm saying this isn't the
Andrew,
fight. I didn't say this isn't
not
the fight we
about
should ever have today.
inauguration.
I'm
It
saying
is the fight we should have, because
the
this is what
fight we
people
ought
are
to be
wrestling with at
having
home.
is on the substance
The
of what this man
substance
plans to
is
do
why
with us.
his ass should not be welcome into the Oval. That is the whole point.
The
It is
voters
bigger.
have
The
made that
substance,
decision.
I don't care. I don't care. They
Yeah,
need to
because
be
you know what though,
informed.
because I think yes, and Andrew, what you're saying is yes, he's going to be in the Oval. We get that. I think what Angela can correct me if I'm wrong. I think what Angela is saying is yes, if he's going to be in the Oval, that doesn't mean that we have to roll out the red carpet for him. But
No,
but let me just say, Andrew, I
carpet.
don't think we're going to agree.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
we
We're not.
all
I agree.
disagree. I think out of respect for the
I agree
viewers who
with
tune into this podcast every week, I would rather offer them some information about why we all feel so passionate about this and why we are all so concerned. And that is his cabinet and what they intend to do.
Yeah.
So if y'all are okay with it, I'd like to get into some of these appointees and why this creates such an angst in my spirit, and that I don't think, with respect to the rest of the country, I don't think the rest of the country has taken seriously, but they have f***ed around, and now we are on the precipice of finding out. So let's, Angela, I know you pulled some sound from the cabinet. Let's play that and then argue over these crazy people. Because that's who we mad at. For the listeners listening, it's an intense conversation. We're not mad at each other. We mad at what's going on. And we're passionate.
I'm mad at more than just this incoming cabinet. I'm mad at Joe Biden today for sitting down with this man.
We are all mad. I'm just letting the viewers know we're not mad at each other. We are passionate
I'm mad at
about
some
it.
of the things y'all have said today. That is true.
It's okay.
So it is okay. I think it's fine too. But
we're
whatever.
not. It's not a personal argument with each other. We just have different perspectives on how to do things. So
let's hear about this.
Yeah, the cabinet. Well, I know there's sound, but Andrew, I know that you have a lot to say about Susie Wiles, who will be the first woman to serve as chief of staff. But we haven't heard from the cabinet. And Angela, I know you pulled sound, so do you want to kick us off with some sound?
I was getting ready to do that. Sure. So there are a number of appointments that he is going to make, that he's planning to make. Susie Wiles has already been mentioned by Tiffany. Stephen Miller, who was recently over America First Legal, is going to transition back into the White House. And for those of you who don't know about Stephen Miller, he will be Deputy White House Chief of Staff for Policy. You should look at some of the things that he said and did in the last term. Tom Homan, who is going to be the border czar. I think we should roll this clip.
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Why should a child who is an American citizen have to pack up and move to a country that they don't know?
Because their parent obviously entered the country illegally, had a child knowing he was in the country illegally, so he created that crisis.
Okay.
Can I just say really quickly, Angela, before you go on? One, I definitely have more to say about Tom Homan. I watched 60 Minutes as my Sunday tradition. I just want us to be factually accurate because this moves so quickly. We don't know for certain. It has just been reported that Trump could potentially intend to name Stephen Miller as the deputy chief of staff. What we know factually as of the time of this recording is he has publicly, or his team has confirmed Susie Wiles as chief of staff and 13 or 12 additional potential cabinet members then. So all the rumors that you're hearing, they have not come out and said that. They've come out and named these 13. I just want to make sure that we're factually accurate.
It's a test balloon.
Next, we expect Secretary of State will be Senator Marco Rubio. Let's roll that sound.
Senator Rubio. Rubio, will you call for a ceasefire?
No, I will not.
in Gaza?
On the
Senator
contrary.
Rubio,
Are you filming it?
Wait,
So I
yes.
want you guys to get this. I want them to destroy every element of Hamas they can get their hands on. These people are vicious animals who did horrifying crimes. And I hope you guys post that.
And what about the civilians that are being killed every day?
Hamas should stop hiding behind civilians, putting civilians in the way. Hamas knew that this was going to lead to this. So Hamas should stop building their military installations underneath hospitals.
So you don't care that 15,000 have died? You don't care about the babies that are being killed every day?
I think it's horrifying. I think it's terrible, and I think Hamas is 100% to blame. That's what I think. Make sure you post that, please.
Can I just say really quickly about Senator Marco Rubio, Republican from Florida? Again, this is somebody I know you say he expects to name him. There's been significant pushback from Republicans. They are fighting that, and his campaign has come out and said they have not confirmed anything about Marco Rubio being Secretary of State. I think it's going to happen, but I just want to let folks know that there is internal pushback against this happening, which is why they haven't confirmed it.
John Ratcliffe is expected to be named CIA director. Let's roll sound.
Do you actually believe that the Justice Department, given that they were on the same team working together to get Hunter the sweetheart deal, are actually investigating him for that?
I think we should all be skeptical of that, Katie. Look, this is probably the most politically corrupt case I've ever seen. I mean, what you're looking at here is where the Department of Justice and the FBI investigators involved in this matter were cutting off lines of inquiry into witnesses or access to witnesses, tipping off witnesses and lawyers about subpoenas. This, for Attorney General Merrick Garland, for Christopher Wray, for U.S. Attorney Weiss, I mean, they all ought to be absolutely ashamed. This is another huge black eye for the Department of Justice and the FBI, and everyone should be skeptical.
When in fact, what no one had ever heard of was a person in the U.S. being prosecuted on the crimes that they prosecuted Mr. Biden for. Never before.
Mike Huckabee is expected to be named ambassador to Israel. Let's roll that.
Basically, I mean, there really is no such thing as, and I have to be careful in saying this because people will really get upset. There's really no such thing as a Palestinian. There's not. You have Arabs and Persians. You don't have, you know, and there's such complexity within that. There's really no such thing. That's been a political tool to try to force land away from Israel.
Representative Mike Waltz is supposed to be named National Security Advisor. Representative Lee Zeldin, Environmental Protection Agency Administrator. Elise Stefanik is supposed to be named U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Let's please roll that sound.
Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face of evil.
Pete Hegseth, who is a Fox News host, an Army veteran, is supposed to be named the Defense Secretary. Let's please roll that sound.
The military cannot be organized like a Harvard faculty lounge, catering to ever more obscure constituencies. Our key constituency is normal men and women, looking to be heroes and not victims. We aren't a collection of aggrieved tribes. Meritocracy is our bedrock. Lethality is our trademark. There is no black, white, or brown in our ranks. We're all green, and we all bleed red. Our strength is not in our diversity, but in our unity and in our love for our nation, our families, and most of all, each other.
Kristi Noem is expected to be named the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are supposed to be over a new entity called the Department of Government Efficiency. We just played some sound today. I encourage you all to Google and look up sound for the rest of these folks, what they really think, and whether or not this is what you intended when you voted for the economy. Every single one of these folks who he's naming, who he's saying he intends to appoint to these positions, have said very little about the economy so far. And so I'm eager to see how your economics shake out.
Just want to add to that really quickly, Andrew. Steve Witkoff is expected to be named, or his campaign has confirmed they expect to name Steve Witkoff to be special envoy to the Middle East. Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, and Bill McGinley to White House counsel. And just echoing your points that none of these people I feel comfortable with in having any kind of influence over the government.
You know, I think the important piece, because obviously more and more of this is going to develop over the next coming days, is that these folks really do present a total ideological shift from certainly what I believe, but largely what we've experienced from most Democratic leaders. I would just note this: Mike Huckabee, Governor Noem, the last guy, defense guy, sounds just like they're in the pack, are described as these sort of Christian Zionists who believe their support for Israel is unmitigated because they believe it to be biblical. That the Jewish people must re-inhabit this territory in order for the return of the Messiah. And so when they say give them anything, whatever they need to do whatever they got to do to vanquish their foe, they mean exactly that. In fact, I think you've had some of these folks on record as basically not recognizing not Hamas, but not recognizing the people of Gaza as human. I mean, they treat them as subhuman. They don't think that these folks deserve to live, breathe, walk on the land as we do. And the other correction I would make, Huckabee talked about the fact that these Palestinians were there to take the land that rightly belonged before to the Jews. And I just want to correct historically that Palestinians existed on the land prior to the Jewish state having been established. And obviously, this part of the world has been inhabited by every major faith. In fact, I think every major faith that is practiced in the world has roots and considers segments of the Western Wall, and its surrounding areas as their highest holy sites, among their highest holy sites. So there is no one religion that claims ownership of total ownership of those lands, which is why there's been complex negotiated agreements to divide them between them.
Want to get back into the cabinet for a second because there some of the people that we named, again, it's hard when you're asking people to care about everything because it ends up having the opposite effect and people don't care about anything. Yeah. But I don't think we can stress enough the danger of having John Ratcliffe run the CIA. Now, this is, you all, for those of you who paid attention to politics, you'll remember that he was Trump's DNI, the director of national intelligence, and he faced numerous accusations about weaponizing intelligence to boost Trump's political prospects. You may also remember that Trump had Kislyak, the equivalent of a SecDef in Russia. He had him in the Oval Office. He gave away sensitive secrets in the Oval Office. So on the global scale, this it should give us all pause. Like, this is incredibly dangerous. Governor Mike Huckabee, the father of Trump's first press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, current governor of Arkansas. We played his sound, but you could literally Google anything this guy has said. He's made numerous distasteful remarks. I want to talk about the SecDef pick for a minute. Mr. Hegseth, who, as Angela said, is a Fox News host, he did serve in the armed forces. He served in the Army. He has zero experience running any organizations. You are turning the one thing that gives us comfort in these United States, because we have attracted a lot of enemies. The one thing that gives us some level of comfort and safety outside of our morals, because there may be moral things that we take issue with, but our military budget swallows that of pretty much the rest of the globe. He is turning over the military to a Fox News host who has never run any type of organization. Same with Susan Wiles. She has worked in local Florida politics, which is how you know her, Andrew, but she has very little experience with the federal government. That chief of staff position, you have to maneuver Capitol Hill, the agencies. She's going to be learning on the job. The potential SecDef, Hegseth, has said he doesn't believe women should serve in combat. He lacks any kind of high-level strategic experience that most normal presidents would seek out of their cabinet appointees. Kristi Noem.
He believes that diversity in the military was harmful and has made us weaker.
Yes.
His statements.
Kristi Noem is batshit crazy. and actually wrote in her book about shooting a puppy, her 14-month-old puppy. And I say that to say, obviously I love dogs, but I say that to say how hypocritical America is. Because Americans mostly love dogs. And they celebrated this woman who bragged about shooting her puppy and talked about how much pleasure it gave her, how much she hated the dog. So I don't know.
Because it couldn't be trained.
Yeah. So I don't know what
They did say that adversely impacted her ability to be chosen as his running mate. But I will say that this is when they talk about DEI, this is a DEI cabinet based on Republican standards.
Yeah.
They didn't earn it. They don't have the capacity. Our friend Alicia Garza would say they lack the range. They don't have the range, and they have no qualifications whatsoever to serve in any of these roles. None of them. And moreover, with whatever they're trying to do to get, to pull the wool over the American people's eyes, the folks that will now be granted access to sensitive compartmented information facilities, the SCIF, in the White House, they get their security clearances. They will be cleared by a private firm. They will no longer have to go through government clearance background checks to ensure that they should be handling classified documents. The documents won't just be in Mar-a-Lago. They'll be in backpacks on planes and everywhere else. We need to be talking about not these resumes, because there ain't no resumes here. We need to be talking about what this means for the American people. We have overwhelmingly heard in exit polls that y'all chose this candidate because of the economy. Tell me economy where? Out of all of these cabinet appointments, even the folks that are going into the White House allegedly, Stephen Miller, where has he ever talked about the economy? Where? He cares about deportations. They want to send a signal. The first signal they want to send is mass deportations. What do y'all think that's going to do to your economy?
Precisely. And I think we should dig into that. But what I'd like to talk about with you guys is, I guess my question is, should we continue doing the show? Native Land Pod launched with, a certain intention. And now I wonder what that intention is. So we'll go to a quick break. And on the other side of this, I think we should have a heart-to-heart about should we continue doing the show, and if so, what it looks like. So we'll get into that on the other side of the break. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. I want to correct something Angela pointed out in the break that Donald Trump did, in fact, publicly say that he plans to name Stephen Miller. Yeah, I don't exactly still see it, but I take your word for it that he did come out and say that. I take your word. But the truth is, what I was saying in the break is there's such a news dump with him. So by the weekend, who knows who else that he would have named in this time. So maybe by that time he will have publicly said something about Rubio. Who knows?
And Tiff, before you go into your cliffhanger question, I just wanted to mention as well that Elon Musk, aside from this government efficiency thing, and maybe there'll be some slight benefit here in the fact that he now is going to expose himself to FOIA, the ability to look more deeply into relationships, congressional oversight, so on and so forth. But I don't think it's a good thing to have the government, period. But I did want to mention another conflict, which I think is pretty significant. And that is right now, you've already mentioned earlier, Tiffany, the number of contracts that he has with the federal government and those that he's in line to have. But he also, as part of the space program, and his contracts with the Defense Department, privately owns these missile weapons defense systems, one of
satellites,
which is over Ukraine.
Yep.
And it was previously operable, previously helped to fend off missiles coming into Ukraine from Russia. And for the last year or so, he's told Russia and Zelensky that it is not working. He also owns a similar system over Taiwan. And we know that we've got conflict between Taiwan and mainland China. And what if Elon Musk just decides, you know what? Forget the defense secretary. I can make U.S. defense policy and global defense policy all on my own.
That's
because
what
as
we're
a
looking
private
at.
citizen, I already own the equipment.
That
the
is what we're
ability for
looking
him
at.
to turn off missile defense systems and turn them on. He was already reported to have kept up relationships with Vladimir Putin directly over these last several years and months. There ought to be alarm bells going off for Republicans, Democrats, and everybody else who's in power and can hold this man accountable. And again, the voters have done what they've done, but there are still systems of accountability that have to provide the proper checks and balances.
Well,
here.
his company, SpaceX, I mean, they pretty much dictate NASA's space launch schedule. And you've already talked about the satellites that he controls in orbit. Just imagine what that could mean.
It's
but I think
power.
this gets into the question, though, because, you know, I just want to hear what y'all think about the show and continuing the show and what it looks like.
Yeah.
I know for me, it's really, really important to inform. I don't care as much about people's opinions. So I think if we continue to do the show, that's something that I would personally be committed to. I think, you know, sadly, what rises to the top a lot of times in the podcast space is mess and nonsense and, you know, no diss to anybody, but like Club Shay Shay or like people who really don't know what they're talking about politically. And so people gravitate to that. So I don't really care how many people listen to this podcast, that podcast. I'd rather reach 100 people who understand and get informed out of it than reach a million people in one viral moment and people will still go back to, you know, the foolishness. So I don't know how to make noise in a space where people don't really value intellect. And sometimes it feels like that's what I'm trying to do, and it's frustrating. So for me, I'm having like a career existential crisis in this moment, and that's what I'm considering as we move forward with what this show looks like.
And Tiff, is it fair to say part of what proffers this question is that the environment is going to change radically? Our ability to influence upon the people who are making decisions that impact our everyday lives not only will be diminished in the way, by comparison to what it might look like where they were friendlier administration. But on top of that, the amount of threat, personal, bodily, economic, and otherwise, that this incoming administration has loud and proud already announced against people who they consider to be enemies within, people who disagree, people who don't like, and also how do we honestly, with real integrity, make sure that the value that's being added here allows people to then take from it, move forward independently in coalition and groups with family and otherwise to make a bad situation better by our having been here. And for me, I threw some of my own in there and I attributed the change in administration to be maybe one part of the reason for the questioning.
Well, yes, but I just want to point out it's Kash Patel. Kash Patel, who is rumored to be, you know, hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. According to the reporting, he is being considered for a position in Trump's cabinet, and he has said that they will go after members of the media criminally and or civilly. I'm not scared of that, to be honest. I think my question is, as a result of this man getting reelected and the reshaping of American government, because it's not just the federal government, it is the gubernatorials, it's the state houses, it's the mayors, it's all across. The Republicans took over. Will people tune in and have a little more intellectual curiosity than they do now? Or will people tune out and just say this is all too much? And I'd rather watch foolishness and nonsense and traffic and celebrity gossip and doom stroll and, you know, take selfies on Instagram.
Last week.
For a few days, but after a while, it's like, I got to get back in the game. And I think a part of this election is because the dumbing down of the American electorate. So a part of me is like, all I've ever known to do was journalism. Anything I did outside of that was in a communicate. A lot of people can make the transition from journalism to comms. But when I look at it now, I don't know where I fit in this media landscape anymore. I really don't. That's an honest question. But it's framed in a larger conversation around the vision for this show and what it looks like going forward.
Well, Tiff, I'll just offer that I believe that we don't speak to everybody. Certainly don't speak to everybody who we would like to be speaking to. But I do believe we have built a home for people who are interested in government, interested in government's impact on their lives, may not be able to follow or are interested in even following all the nuance and the ins and outs and the days and weeks of what's happening. But when they know more, are exposed to more, or their positions get challenged by maybe something they've heard in this platform, either in the comments section of it or by something that we've said or done or interacted with on the show, that they then leave whatever place that they are at, and this conversation starts to build as they are in community with their friends, families, coworkers, so on and so forth. So just like I think that there are platforms, radio shows, I'll name check the Breakfast Club as one, because, RJ was reminding me, she was telling me, people were like, why did y'all do a political show, so political, with, a platform that is not as political and maybe not as interested in politics? And I said, I think that in some ways it's the exact merger that has to happen, where you get people who don't give a damn about this thing on a day in, day out, and frankly, maybe on a year in and year out. But part of not giving a damn might mean that nobody has helped you to see how the decisions that are being made right now, the people who are being put in place right now, will have inexplicable impact on your life of your family, the life of your children.
Well, that's the question, though. Will people tune in for that reason? I
think we have to be clear that we aren't talking to everybody, and to at some level make peace as we continue to grow and become hopefully a real service to people, that folks will plug in, and the ones who plug in then become the ambassadors for the messages that they then have either heard or matured on their own based off of the safe space that's been created. So honestly, I got to tell you, I think if there was ever a time to be loud, proud, rowdy, come check me, boo, I heard that somewhere, it is now, not when we have friends in the administration necessarily, although that's helpful. Like? Well, I mean, I think let's throw it to the listeners and let them tell us some of their thoughts on what it looks like. I've never done it before like this, but I do know that there's a big ass void, and we can no longer afford for that void to get any bigger, any wider. Because back to the earlier question around what's the strategy going to be? This strategy has to now become an in the house conversation, because we are losing quite a bit, and the trajectory is moving in the wrong direction from within the house. So we got to secure this space, the space that allows us to win elections, before I think before we really find ourselves up a creek without a pedal, because folks will have completely abandoned the process and given up with no belief that any of this stuff works for them. Yeah. Tiff, Angela, what do you're the motherboard and the genius of the idea. I know that today looks different than it did the day we learned the nominee, but the day we learned the nominee also looked different than the first several weeks and months of this show, where we were all having fun going in and out of politics, but also culture and also interpersonal and so on and so forth. Where do you see things?
Well, I think first I really disagree on the idea that we can't inform and have opinions. I think that there are people that tune into this show every week to hear an educated opinion that is rooted in some type of experience, whether that be, working on the Hill or as a candidate, or Tiff, you in journalism. So I think that it would be unfortunate for us to just simply become C-SPAN, right? I think that we should have some color or some culture to continue in what we share with the audience, should we continue. I think the idea of not talking to everyone is not a smart strategy. I think that we should be trying to figure out what basic arithmetic is by engaging in the politics of addition and hopefully in multiplication at some point. And I think that we can do that in truth by questioning things that should be questioned, by asking and challenging things that normally folks are not rewarded for challenging. But we are in a unique time period in this country that is very, very dangerous. It's dangerous just to speak up, let alone take action. And so we got to decide if we have the wherewithal, the bandwidth, the ability, and the desire to do that on this show or anywhere else. I'm going to engage in the fight. I'm going to engage in the fight on multiple fronts. I'd be happy to do it with y'all, but I don't want to do it in a way where it's like, oh, we can't question what is the norm. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm not, because I think that is a disservice to the American people and to ourselves. For too long, I think Black folks in particular in this country have had to grin and bear it. And I think those times are over. I think those times are over within the Democratic Party itself. I think those times are over within the country itself. And what you're starting to see is the things that were seeping out, and there was a slow drip. Now there's a dam that burst. And so what is the opportunity within that process of the bursting of the dam and truth really finally spilling over in a way that you can't ignore anymore? So I'd love to continue the conversation and figure out if there is a path for Native land.
Can I just really quickly make a point of clarification in that I always have opinions. If somebody heard me, if somebody heard me say that we should not have opinions, let me correct the record. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I don't care about most people's opinions. I care about being informed, and that's what I try to do. I think you can inform something that is wrapped in an opinion, but I hear a lot of, across a lot of podcasts and cable news outlets of people just saying, well, this is what I think about that. And I don't really, if I can't walk away and say, oh, I learned something from this person, or I didn't know that this person introduced me to something, then it does seem to be a waste of my time. But there are other people out there who just like to traffic in opinion. That's just not what I like to do. So I think, since this show has started, I've tried to root my opinions in information. And I hope that when people listen to me and listen to this podcast, they've walked away and they've learned something from each of us. My question, though, that I think is rhetorical is, will people tune in for that? Or are people going to be so exhausted with all it? Because Trump is a nightmare. Will people be so exhausted with all of this that they just say, you know what, I'm tuning out? Like, I don't want to hear, I don't want to get frustrated. I just want to exist in my own little box of reality, and I don't want to hear what craziness this man has done. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I think the history of us as a people is that we've never had the comfort and convenience of checking out.
Ever.
Because that is a comfort. That is a convenience.
There are people
who can.
It's a privilege.
Absolutely. To say, oh, I ain't concerned about any of that. Until your lives and your children's lives and the people who you love's lives quite literally are at risk by the decisions that are being made on our on quote unquote on our behalf. I should also just say, I know everybody thinks the sky has fallen, and in so many ways it has. Did. But I also want to remind us that over the arc of history of us as a people, I'm so glad about the ancestors who didn't choose to give up. I'm so glad that we can go back to the transatlantic slave trade. We can go back to the Civil War, pre-Civil War. We can talk about all the blows we were dealt and had to get right back up. We can talk about Dr. King being shunned by his own people, told to get out and not be a troublemaker, and still persisted. And not everybody was a part of the movement, right? Because it produced what it was intended to, in some parts, produce. So I don't think I think I know the answer to whether or not people are going to check in. Now, they can get their information from any variety, their opinions from any variety of sources. That's all good with me. But what I absolutely know for sure is that we're not quitters. The times do get hard. But I know this for sure. Those tough times don't last, but tough people absolutely do. We had a shellacking in the election after Obama was elected. And we didn't think we would reclaim power. The Republicans experienced the same, did a whole goddamn autopsy. They thought their party was dead, had to be rebuilt. But in this case, our work is internal. I think we should use every platform stance that we have to inform that, while we also fight like hell against this administration on all forms and on all fronts, to the extent that they are a threat to our existence, our lives, our livelihood. And by the way, I believe that voters can go in the voting booth and vote for a thing that they believe they are being sold and still have been bamboozled.
Exactly.
It's the leader
and
who
that's
decides
where
that.
our obligation comes in to make sure they know how dangerous it is.
And that's why I think it's a good thing to pose to the viewers.
Yeah.
What do you got? I mean, because we started, like we said, we started this show different. And we achieved, I think a lot of success here. We grew an audience, but beyond an audience, I feel like we grew community. Yeah. So I would like to hear from the community. Important. What do you guys want to see from Native Land going forward? Will you, where do y'all stand? Do y'all, want to tune in every week and hear us talk about these things? And what specifically do you want to, like, what would you like our role to be in your diet of information and things that are, of all the things that are competing for your attention? What would you like our role to be? And as,
Tiffany is never going to allow every episode to be about Donald damn Trump. I can remember that back from the very beginning. You were like, I am not talking about this man.
Well, I mean, but that's also a serious consideration because trying to cover him is like trying to catch confetti, I always say. And so it's like when you talk about something on the day that you record, it is old by the next day. So how do we cover somebody who is an agent of chaos, who does these like big news dumps overnight, typically on a Friday, so none of the networks can cover it. Like, we saw this playbook already. So do we talk about more overarching themes? Do we, talk about, like we did a show on fascism that I think was a mini pod. If it is, check it out. I can't remember. Or are we going to be chasing every little story saying this is what happened on Tuesday and we're outraged about it and then it's old by Friday? I think these are all legitimate questions that we will have to ask, and ask for your grace as our viewers who tune in as we figure it out. Because I've seen y'all's comments before about the show and tape, and it's like, damn, we don't have studios in our house. Well, some of us do. One of us don't. But yeah, we are not a daily show, so we do the best we can with the schedule we have. But yeah, I'm curious to hear from.
I don't think we ought to do anything that doesn't create shift. And I think I think God put us on this road
shift out
for
this show.
a reason, and we are shifting out the show. I'll just complete by saying God put us each on this earth for a reason to do a work that is particular and specific to us, and that if we do not do it, then that work will not be done. That's not just for the three of us. I think that's for everybody who walks and breathes.
All right.
Well, you got a work to do.
Yes. Well, before we end the show, I do want to just remind everybody to please leave us a review and subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available. Yes, we're available on all platforms and YouTube. And as you all know, new episodes drop every Thursday. We also have mini pods that drop every Monday, which we need to talk about what we're going to talk about on the mini pod, by the way. You can also follow us on social media. We are Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, and Andrew Gillum. Welcome home, y'all. There, as of right now, there are 721 days until midterm elections. That was a question that we posed too. I was like, do we really want to say how long till midterm elections? Angela said yes. I think Andrew, you said yes too.
I'm in. Hell
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Angela and Andrew want to say. So I was going to ask y'all what y'all think, but democracy rules where we are. So Angela and Andrew want to keep
unless you invite them to the Oval.
Yeah.
Blessed Lord.
All right. 721 days until midterm elections. We will see you guys next time on Native Land. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome home.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rod Gillum and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth, even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Welcome home, y'all.
What's
Welcome
up,
home.
sis?
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.